The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, I guess in simplistic terms, it is the loss of the petrodollar status. And it is the realization that it has been the protection, in simplistic terms, the protection of the Saudi kingdom for the past nearly 50 years that has granted us the world reserve currency or the petrodollar status. By extension, the protection of the Saudi kingdom was a deal that OPEC and Saudi Arabia, obviously, would denominate oil in dollars exclusively. And since 1974, nearly 85% of all oil sold across the globe has been in U.S. dollars. And this demand for dollars, this synthetic demand, has given us the luxury of being world reserve. And that has been unchallenged for all of our lifetimes until recently.
Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. All right, not going to lie. Took every ounce of my self-control when I got home last night around 9:30 at night from a busy day dealing with liquid vitamin business, not to get on the microphone. All right, we have a lot to talk about today. I wanted to start off with that clip of the petrodollar because I received so many questions from episode 46 about the petrodollar. Actually, people were like, okay, I kind of get this. I kind of understand it. But, what the heck? This thing has been around since 1974, 73. Why have I never heard of it? And exactly. That's why. Because this is something that, this is chess. This is the geopolitical chess that's going on. And if you ask most Americans, honestly, next time you're at a party, this is fun party talk from Ray D. Next time you're at a party this weekend, ask, hey, do you know what the petrodollar is? That would be hilarious. If anybody has the desire or the comedic interest in asking people at a party if they know what the petrodollar is, please do that and report back to me. I would love to talk about and share some of those responses. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about the petrodollar today. We're also going to get into the bombing of a refugee camp in Gaza, which, just not good, not good. It's the opposite of ceasefire. It's bombing refugee camps that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, admitted and took credit for. It looks like anywhere between 25 to 200 innocent civilians were killed, with hundreds other injured, and they are claiming that took out one senior Hamas leader. So I'm going to play some stuff for you regarding that. But what I did want to say is in the next episode, I'm going to do a little 712 that ends up being longer. It's almost like 2 or 3 712s in one, about the military-industrial complex, because the more I realize it, the more I think about it, the more I realize we really have to have the military-industrial complex background and the petrodollar background as really the backdrop in the back of our minds when we talk about everything else, including all of the stuff going on in Israel and Palestine, Ukraine and Russia, and really everything going on in the world right now. Okay, my good friend Amy Plum Chandler, she's getting a shout out here. We had a back and forth on a few different things, including the fact that I think she's crazy for working out at 5 a.m. because, man, that is just insane in the membrane, insane in the brain. Or as the kids like to say, that is extra. Anyway, we were talking all about this Israel-Palestine stuff, and then after a few things, she said, I totally agree. As in all things, follow the money. I'm beginning to feel like it's a shiny nickel, or it's the shiny nickel. What are we missing when all of our focus is forced to be on what's going on in Israel? So that's what she wrote. And then if you think about it, you can rewind that to all of our focus being what's going on in Ukraine, Russia. Prior to that, all of our focus being on what's going on with vaccines. Prior to that, all of our focus being on what's going on with, the Black Lives Matters and those protests. Prior to that, what's going on with the initial stages of COVID and, oh my God, what is this? And these are just kind of the big topics. Then you can fill in the gaps, or in this case, fill in the weeks with, the Titan submersible situation, the Sam Bankman-Fried FTX collapse. I'm really going to go through 2023. Actually, this will be the year in recap. I'll do this episode in late December. But, all of then the weekly distractions that occupy our thought process for that week. And so what I wrote back to her, and I'm just going to read this because I want to tie it to two other things. I said, 1,000%, I think it's the conversion to the central bank digital currency stuff. Without us realizing it, and in the threat of war, I should have wrote under the threat of war, they're going to completely change money. So that's what I wrote back to her. And I really think the central bank digital currency, the petrodollar, the military-industrial complex, those are three big things that I always want to sort of have in the back of my mind. I think this BRICS relationship of these countries trying to almost form, a competitive team against the United States and maybe the G7. And what I was thinking about yesterday was, gosh, maybe BRICS becomes the new USSR, BRICS is Ivan Drago, we stay Rocky Balboa. BRICS collectively against G7, maybe that's the new colder war moving ahead. Or, and I want to drop this, and I want you to keep this in mind, or is something going on behind the scenes collectively amongst all these countries and all these leaders to where they can implement their central bank digital currency individually in each country, and therefore the governments of these respective countries individually basically have total control. It goes back to that statement I said yesterday, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So think about that and think about who the participants are in that. I'll give you a hint. It's not good for me and you. All right, but for now, let's stay positive. Okay, I want to play one more thing in regards to the petrodollar because I think this also made a lot of sense from this economist that I listened to. So give this a listen.
If we fast forward, we see the admission by Saudi Arabia to China that, hey, you are our most important oil partner this year and for the next 50 years, beginning to accentuate this belief that I had. And just recently at the meeting in Davos, they came out and said, well, we're open to using other currencies.
All right, so last thing on that, he said, again, Saudi Arabia and China, these guys, we have to keep an eye on this partnership. Saudi Arabia said next 50 years. Remember yesterday I talked about Xi Jinping. He's got a 50-year plan, basically. I mean, that's insane. Or was it a 30-year plan? Anyway, if it's 30 or 50, it's still a hell of a long time. And so that partnership when it comes to oil with Saudi Arabia is part of that. And then the last thing I wanted to say, and again, this is just to keep the petrodollar on the back of your mind, is, when the petrodollar was created, that was 1973. And in 1973, the USSR, as we talked yesterday and even today, they were a superpower. Iran at the time, under the rule of the Shah, God rest his soul. By the way, if you ever meet anybody from Iran and they don't like the Shah, tell them to come talk to me because they are just completely off. So Iran was super strong at that time. And so Saudi Arabia needed the United States in 1973, because I did have one person yesterday say, hey, why did they agree to this petrodollar? I mean, I get why it benefits the United States, but why did it benefit Saudi Arabia? And the answer to that was kind of what this economist said at the beginning of this podcast. The U.S. protected Saudi Arabia. We gave them arms. We gave them military protection. And this is where the military-industrial complex and the petrodollar are basically BFFs. They're hand in hand. So in 1973, they agreed to that because we gave them that military protection. So the question becomes, maybe they don't need it anymore. Does Saudi Arabia need that military protection from the United States still? Or can they seek that protection from a combination of China plus Russia plus Iran? Or do they have, I guess, enough? You're talking about 50 years now. I don't know what their military is like. You never see the Saudi military flex their muscles the way you see like North Korea and other countries who show you their military strength. But, do they have enough military strength where they're like, okay, hey, you know what, guys? We're good on this petrodollar thing. It's had a nice run. Let's do what's in our best interest. And maybe in our best interest, it's settling our oil transactions with China in the yuan, settling our oil transactions with Russia in the Russian ruble, or again, are we going to start settling all of this in BRICS or a combination of assets among the BRICS crew, gold, whatever? So anyway, that stuff is all tied together in my opinion, and hopefully this brought a little more clarity and a little more education to this collective, I guess, concept of the petrodollar, the military-industrial complex, and how these things have basically been related and ingrained since 1973. Holy mackerel, that was a mouthful. I'm going to stop and take a sip of my hot tea. All right, I'm back. That actually made me think of something, because I've had a few people ask, they're like, dude, how long does it take you to do this stuff? And so here's something I think might be interesting. So my first, episode where I really introduced myself and all that, actually, it ended up being episode number 2, because that fiery Republican debate where I dropped my hot take that the only chance the Republicans have is for them all to drop out like Mike Pence did a couple days ago and all get behind Trump and make it a one-horse race and make the Democrats basically try to, if they continue to try to convict Trump of something, make the Democrats take away, the election next year, which, by the way, I don't even know if there's going to be one. More on that later. But the point of this was that episode, my first episode, was 52 minutes long. And I'm not going to lie, just to record it, just to do what I'm doing right now, that first episode probably took me close to 3 hours. Because again, it was the first time I was really doing it. I was stopping, rewinding, all that stuff. Yesterday's episode, which was 2 days ago's episode 46, which was an hour and 5 minutes. So that, just to record it, that probably took me maybe an hour and 15 minutes, meaning that I only had about 10 minutes of start and stop and cut. And, I do like to try to remove the ums and a couple of those words. I've decided I just am not going to be able to stop saying the word gotta, so I gotta keep saying that. But that episode yesterday took me about an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 to record, and it ended up being an hour and 5 minutes. So not a lot of waste, so to speak. Now, with that, after that, I probably have another hour's worth of work in terms of, creating the graphic for the cover art, writing the episode description, although I do leverage ChatGPT and AI technologies for that, and then basically getting it scheduled to post. So an hour and 5 episode number 46. Let's say that took me 2 hours to prepare. The 52-minute episode, which was episode number 2, that probably took me 5 hours to prepare. So I am getting more efficient at this process. All right, let's shift gears a little bit. So next up, we've got to talk about this refugee camp that was bombed in northern Gaza. Remember, northern Gaza is where the Israeli, everything is saying, okay, everybody get out of northern Gaza. You need to get out of northern Gaza. There's an interesting thing that is circulating about northern Gaza. I'm not going to share it just yet because honestly, I want to try and get a little more confirmation before I even talk about it. But anyway, so it looks like the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, they basically bombed the largest refugee camp. So give this an initial listen.
Explosion at the largest refugee camp in Gaza.
It does appear as if the casualties are extremely high. The doctors in that hospital, Indonesia hospital, say, describing the casualties they're receiving. They're treating them, they say, on the floors, in the corridors. They're literally running out of space. The IDF say that they were targeting a Hamas commander who was hiding among civilians. They say that he was in a bunker with other Hamas fighters. They say that they have killed 50 Hamas terrorists today. Now, Hamas has responded as well, and they say the commander that the IDF says they killed wasn't in Jabalia.
All right, so that was Wolf Blitzer's initial report. Again, they dropped what ended up being 6 bombs in that refugee camp. It looks like reports anywhere from 25 to 200 innocent civilians were killed. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, said they killed the one Hamas commander, and then Hamas has come out and said that dude was not even there. So again, I don't know about that, but here's the next clip I want to play for you. This was Wolf Blitzer's interview with the Israeli Defense Force, I guess, captain or something. And by the way, this is interesting. Wolf Blitzer, just if you don't know who that is, he is a CNN journalist. I think you'd recognize him. First of all, his voice is very distinctive, so you probably have recognized the voice already. He was the voice in that first clip. And he's an older gentleman, has a very healthy white beard. Again, like I said, I think you'd recognize him. But Wolf Blitzer is Jewish, and he is very, very pro-Israel, as is Jake Tapper, by the way. Jake Tapper is the other CNN journalist. He's been introducing many of the clips that I've played for you guys over the past few episodes. So Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper, both Jewish Americans, and both, again, over the years, incredibly supportive. I mean, you'd think they were on the Israeli payroll, and it's interesting to see them, a little bit combative. And give a listen to this. This is a really, really interesting interview that he did that's making the rounds. Again, because of, I guess, how supportive Wolf Blitzer previously is, people are surprised he pressed this guy as much as he did. So give this a listen.
But you know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south. Civilians that are not involved with Hamas, please move south.
I'm just trying to get a little bit more information. You knew there were civilians there. You knew there were refugees, all sorts of refugees, but you decided to still drop a bomb on that refugee camp, attempting to kill the Hamas commander. By the way, was he killed?
I can't confirm yet. There'll be more updated. Yes, we know that he was killed. About the civilians there, we're doing everything we can to minimize. I'll say it again. Sadly, they are hiding themselves within civilian population. And again, we are doing this stage by stage, and we're going to go after every one of these terrorists who was involved in that heinous attack on the 7th of October.
All right, that's the segment that's basically making the rounds. And again, I want you to listen to this second part again. I mean, I do give Wolf Blitzer credit. He absolutely pushed him. Listen to this again, because there's 2 things in here that we're going to talk about.
I'm just trying to get a little bit more information. You knew there were civilians there. You knew there were refugees, all sorts of refugees, but you decided to still drop a bomb on that refugee camp, attempting to kill the Hamas commander.
I mean, they knew there were civilians there, tons of civilians, and they decided to drop the bomb anyway. Again, this is another case of you decide what you think of that. I mean, I don't like it. I'm not going to lie. I don't like that. But you decide, is that appropriate? Is that appropriate to drop 6 bombs on a refugee camp in the I guess under the guise of, oh, there's one Hamas commander hiding? And by the way, remember, supposedly these guys are all underground. They hide in tunnels. So you decide, is it appropriate to drop 6 bombs on a refugee camp and kill hundreds of innocent civilians for the potential of killing one Hamas commander who, it's not like this dude is outside smoking a cigarette. If he is there, he's probably under a bunker, protected as well as they can be protected. So, you decide on that. All right, I'm going to play this next part. Now, if you watch the video, it's a little more obvious because you could tell he's got an earpiece in, but pay attention to Wolf's question and then the general's answer.
By the way, was he killed?
I can't confirm yet. There'll be more updated. Yes, we know that he was killed.
I can't confirm yet. We'll be more updated. And then in his earpiece, no. Yes, he was killed. He was killed. Dumbass, tell him he was killed. Yes, he was killed.
I can't confirm yet. There'll be more updated. Yes, we know that he was killed.
I mean, call a spade, man. Call a spade on this stuff. Come on. That's insane. That's insane. And honestly, to all my Jewish and Israeli friends, I mean, I'm calling balls and strikes on this. Make that make sense to me. Make that make sense to me. Tell me how you justify that. And outside of saying on October 7th, well, look what they did on October 7th. Listen, I totally agree. What took place on October 7th was barbaric, was disgusting to me. Like, any civilian life killed on October 7th was disgusting to me. But again, you've got to start recognizing what's happening right now. And even prior to recognizing what's happening, when is enough enough? When is enough enough? The death toll now, for if we take the facts that all of the organizations, including Reuters, the Associated Press, let alone NBC, ABC, CBS, everybody is reporting, we're basically at 7,400 Palestinians to the same 1,400 that were killed October 7th on the Israeli side. So, when is enough enough? And then outside of that, make sense to me, make it make sense to me, bombing of this refugee camp, killing hundreds of innocent civilians for the opportunity to take out one guy, because that's how it was reported. So, I'm sorry if that triggers you. I really am. I'm sorry, and it probably will, but you gotta call a spade on that. Do a role reversal. Pretend if the exact opposite happened, you'd be going ballistic right now. You would. I mean, seriously, that's something I try to do with everything in my life. I try to do role reversal. So I try to switch roles. And so think about if Hamas yesterday had bombed another town or kibbutz in Israel, and they basically justified it by saying, we're going after that one Israeli general that seems to be, making all the good calls. I mean, the world would go insane. Like, the Western media for sure would go insane. And if that were to happen, and I hope it doesn't, and again, like I said, I can't find any evidence of additional offensive attacks from that side after October 7th, because if it happens again, I mean, we are going to go into World War III. I mean, sooner than I even think we are going to go, because I do think we're headed in that direction. Quick caveat, whether it's a real World War III or the appearance of such, but imagine if the roles were reversed with this bombing and then the attempt at justification of it, where innocent Israeli civilians, let's say 200, you can say 25 if you want to take the low estimate of 25. The high estimate right now is hovering around 200. Can you imagine? I mean, seriously. Okay, here's the clip that played on BBC, and this is getting a lot of attention as well.
Israel's confirmed that it hit the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. It says it was targeting and killed one of the Hamas leaders responsible for the October 7th attacks. The Hamas-run Gazan Health Ministry says at least 50 people were killed, with hundreds injured. Images from the scene show people trying to rescue others trapped under the rubble. Before the war, the camp, made up of high-rise buildings, was home to more than 100,000 people, many of whom have been there for generations since the formation of the State of Israel in 1948.
All right, so then later there was a second part of the Wolf Blitzer interview released, or gosh, maybe it was all one, but I caught it as a second part, and one of the people that I follow, she actually posted it, and she gave a little commentary prior, which again I think it's good. I think it's a fair take. It's a fair take what she says. So listen to her lead in, and then listen to the continuation of the Wolf Blitzer interview with, again, I don't know if that's a general or he's basically a leader in the IDF, one of the military heads that is part of that mission. So listen to this.
Earlier today, Israel dropped a bomb on Jabalia refugee camp in the north, killing and injuring hundreds of Palestinian civilians, and they claim that it was because they were trying to get one of the Hamas leaders. So instead of sending in troops into that refugee camp to get this leader that they claim they were trying to get, they just kill everybody. Imagine if there was a school shooter hiding out in the school, and instead of police going in to find him, they dropped a bomb on the entire school. Before, they hit a hospital and denied it, but now we're just gonna flat out admit it, because at the end of the day, who's gonna stop us?
God damn. And I don't really like to swear, but man, she is raw. She is more raw than I can be, to be honest with you. But a couple things in what she said, I want to unpack a couple things. Oh, by the way, podcasters, they love to say unpack. Present company included. That's a stupid term. I'm going to stop using it. But let's unpack it so I can use it one last time before I stop. Okay, so oh man, what has happened to the world? God, take me back to 2000. Seriously, take me back to no cell phones, no internet, no social media, none of that stuff. Take me back to the Thomas Guide and landlines and just, all right. She brought up the fact that this happened in northern Gaza. There's something there with this northern Gaza thing. I alluded on it a little earlier. I'm going to try and figure it out. It's very interesting to me that all the focus is in northern Gaza. They're telling everyone, evacuate from the north to the south. We talked about that. That's logistically, impossible. It's like evacuating 3 million people from Los Angeles to Orange County. But there's something there with the north. I'm going to figure that out. But then the other thing she talked about was, again, this is like all for one Hamas leader, one person. That's weird to me. She talked about something that I'm going to play this clip, and it's actually a great point. Why not send special forces in? Why do this? Israel, the Mossad, they have probably incredible special forces, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, whatever you want to talk about them, special ops. And then obviously the U.S. would support that. Why not get surgical with this? Get surgical with this. Send in special forces. Yesterday or when Netanyahu gave his speech, they say, this is our 9/11. You've heard that a million times now. This is our 9/11. Well, what did we do in 9/11 to get Osama bin Laden? They sent special forces in. They sent special ops in. There's that Navy SEAL 6 team. They went in surgically. And so in this situation, actually, God damn, this stuff is starting to click for me. especially in this situation. You're talking about one dude in a refugee camp where it's a ton of innocent civilians, and then you're going after one guy? Send special ops in. Get surgical. There's no way they couldn't get that one guy. That doesn't necessitate dropping 6 bombs and bombing the entire village. That's a disconnect. Make that make sense to me. Oh God, she talked about the school shooter. That's funny. That thing is making its rounds. It's like a graphic meme. I wouldn't really call that a meme actually, but it's a graphic. That thing is making its rounds. I've seen it a ton of places, but it says, if there's an active shooter inside a school, are you going to bomb the entire school? That's a good point. And then the hospital, she brought up that hospital from last week. And by the way, I literally checked before posting her clip, because I knew she talked about the hospital. I did a big surveillance on the news. I looked on Google. I looked everywhere. I looked in Bard. I did not look in ChatGPT. Remember, ChatGPT's last update was September 21st. So if you want to use artificial intelligence with current date stuff, you've got to use Bard from Google, or go into the Bing search engine, and ChatGPT is included in Bing, and then that actually pulls up-to-date data. God, total caveat. I'm going to do another episode on that. Jesus, what the hell am I even talking about? Why did I veer that way? Good Lord. But again, I did go in, and there still is no independent verification about that hospital. But you know what? Nobody cares anymore. We've totally moved on from that, because now the refugee camp has been bombed. And so now, like everything, we've got a new shiny toy. The refugee camp, I didn't mean to say that it's a toy. I didn't want to disrespect the people like that. But the new shiny object, the new thing that is in everyone's attention span is the refugee camp. And then she's right. Like this one, the IDF, they took responsibility, because why not? Who's going to stop them? Nobody's stopping anything so far. All right, man, I'm sorry. That thing just kind of set me off. God, maybe I was replicating her energy from that. Anyway, all right, so let's listen to the rest of the Wolf Blitzer segment.
But even if that Hamas commander was there amidst all those Palestinian refugees who are in that Jabalia refugee camp, Israel still went ahead and dropped a bomb there, attempting to kill this Hamas commander, knowing that a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, presumably would be killed. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what you're hearing, Wolf. We're focused on this commander, again, who you'll get more data who this man was, killed many, many Israelis. We're doing everything we can. It's a very complicated battle space. There could be infrastructure there. There could be tunnels there. We're still looking into it, and we'll give you more data as the hour moves ahead.
All right, really quick. So he says, he kind of says it himself. He's like, we're focused on the one commander. It's a very complicated battlefield or battle space, and there could be tunnels there. And, he was a very bad guy. He killed many, many Israelis. I mean, again, to me, that description, that is special ops. That is surgical dissection and extraction and killing. I mean, go get that dude. I'm totally cool with that. Go get that guy, but do it surgically. That was pretty interesting. I feel like he literally almost made the point of why this should be surgical. Okay, let's listen to the rest.
But you know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south. Civilians that are not involved with Hamas, please move south.
All right, I'm going to end it there because we already had heard that the rest of that. So that must have been the precursor to the initial stuff I played you. And you know what? It just clicked for me as I was listening to that, getting ready to hit stop and then record this, which I'm saying right now. I get it now why they want or why they're starting in the north. So they basically are starting in the north because they want to get everybody out of the north, move them down to southern Gaza, and then they're going to attack southern Gaza and basically move them into Egypt. Remember, Egypt shares the southern border with Gaza, and that, I think, is part of this plan. Get everybody out of the north, get them into the south, then you'll have everybody in the south, then get everybody out of the south and almost push them down and make Egypt take everybody. I don't know. That could be it. You know, there's another theory going around about the northern Gaza. I'm not going to say it yet because honestly, I don't like to spread misinformation. So I'm going to wait and see if it like gets any legs under it or behind it. What is that? Under it or behind it? Gets any legs under? Yeah, get my legs underneath me. Okay, gets any legs under it. All right, I'm going to play for you next a clip from Charlie Kirk. You remember Charlie? He is a incredibly, again, I can't stress this enough, incredible pro-Israel. He is the vice president of the I Stand With Israel fan club, Ben Shapiro being the president of that fan club. Anyway, somebody sent me this clip and, you know, I asked him, I said, hey, when was this or where was this? And they didn't know because they said, no, I just got this clip forwarded to me. But I'm pretty sure, and I'm going to go back and listen to the entire thing, but I'm pretty sure this clip came from the same podcast episode that Charlie Kirk did when he was on the PDB, the Patrick Bet David podcast. And it was the one where he talked about how he thought it was hard to believe that it took them 6 hours to react to the initial terror attack on October 7th. I think you remember I played that a couple times. But listen to this from, I'm pretty sure it's from that same interview, because there is a lot of talk right now about really the disconnect between the people in Israel, even honestly, the American Jewish side here in the United States, and then Netanyahu and the hardcore right government of Netanyahu. I think that Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister, falls in that category. And on that side, there's another former prime minister, that I see him getting interviewed all the time. So I'm going to share a couple clips from him. But anyway, and even among the international community, you know, there's a lot of people saying, hey, this isn't Israel. This is Netanyahu. This is him doing all this stuff. This isn't what the people are interested in having done. Now, again, I don't know that yay or nay, but there is a lot of that talk. And so listen to this clip from Charlie, because it kind of reinforces that a little bit, or at least, I don't know, brings that to light.
Something to think about. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yep. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually...
All right, it cut off at the end. He said, when I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right. And I will say, I have followed Charlie ever since COVID, when I kind of discovered him. I mean, he's been on point. He really has been on point with a lot of things in terms of those various issues. But man, that was a hot take right there from him as well. Holy mackerel. And again, remember, this is a very, very pro-Israel guy. So I guess the question that we might need to pose, and I would love if my Jewish Israeli friends, fans, I'm joking with fans, but anyone listening that, is on that side, drop me a line, help me understand where the Israelis really feel about Netanyahu. I really want to understand that. I want to understand, is it all united, or, is there a little bit of pressure there? Is there a little bit of division there? And, if there is, maybe they don't want that being revealed because that signifies maybe some weakness, some cracks in the armor or something. And then they think that whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, whoever will try and, exploit that weakness. But I would love for perspective on that. All right, that is enough for today. I feel like I could go on for like 2 more hours, but you know what? I think we're good there. Did want to give another shout out to my buddy Chris Rill. Actually, Chris gets a double shout out because he texted me yesterday. And again, this was another, random text. And I say random in a nice way, but, we hadn't touched base for several months maybe. And then he texted me and he said, "Hey, buddy, just a quick note to let you know I enjoy your podcast. I may not always agree with you, but appreciate the perspective. Also love the Boost sponsorship." So Chris gets a double shout out because I appreciate your text. And I love the fact that you don't always agree with me. And that's awesome. But it's even more awesome that we can obviously share that together and continue on. But he gets a double shout out because Chris is a loyal Boost Liquid Vitamin subscriber. Probably, gosh, I think Chris has been taking it, if not for a decade, for pretty close to that, at least 7 or 8 years. I know that for sure. So anyway, shout out to Chris Rill. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please keep sending me stuff. Please keep reaching out to me. Please keep texting me, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. Please keep DMing me, sending me emails. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love your perspective on this episode, the podcast in general. I'd love to hear other things you'd like me to talk about. And, honestly, I really am very good at taking feedback. I promise you, both critical and positive. I'm very good at taking positive feedback. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I really do pride myself on being very good at taking critical feedback and trying to basically get better from it, which actually happened today. During the recording of this, I got a call from one of my interns, Calvin, and we had an amazing conversation, and I was going to go back and re-record the beginning to talk about that conversation. But you know what? I will talk about it at the beginning of next episode. So there's a little tease. You get a tease on the Ray and Calvin the intern conversation. All right, everybody, have a wonderful day and keep calling a spade a spade. Keep doing it. Keep being you. Stay positive. I know some of this stuff is not positive, but you know what? Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's bat it around. Let's be respectful to each other. Let's have empathy for each other. Let's have empathy for the Palestinian people. Let's have empathy for the Israeli people. And remember, at the end of the day, it's like the Depeche Mode song. People are people, so why should it be? You and I should get along so awfully. Doom, doom, doom. Doom, doom, doom.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.